3 out of 10 bats were titillated to learn that a barnacle's penis can be up to 8 times its body length, making it the longest penis in relation to body size in the animal kingdom.
Goodness, well, 4 out of 10 bats were interested to learn that new fossils found in Canada of sponges make us think that animals actually evolved 350 million years earlier than expected.
Wow. Well, 7 out of 10 bats were startled to learn that a lesser water boatman rubs its penis along its abdomen, generating a noise 99 decibels loud, making it the loudest penis in the animal kingdom.
Wowzers. All right, well, 10 out of 10 bats were flabbergasted to learn that the most effective hunters on the planet aren't lions, tigers or bears.
Oh my.
Oh no, they are dragonflies with a success rate of 97%.
Hello and welcome back to 8 out of 10 bats.
Yeah, we're thrilled to be here for our 3rd episode, and of course we're still at the amazing location that is Dundreggan Rewilding Centre in the Highlands of Scotland, and today we're starting off with a bang.
It's going to be good. Just wait till you hear this.
Yes, we have 2 very exciting exclusives coming for you tonight. And the first one is the good news that we've all needed. The good news that sometimes we just need to cling on to. And to tell us a little bit more about this information is Indy Green.
Thank you very, very much. And this is the best news I've heard so far this year. And I have it here on my phone for you guys now. So Wild Justice and their partners, the Northern Ireland Badger Group, Born Free Foundation and their lawyers Lee Day have won a judicial review as the Northern Ireland badger cull is ruled unlawful. So the judgment was made in Belfast this morning by the High Court, and solicitor Carol Day said, "Our clients are delighted that the judge has held this consultation to be so unfair to have been unlawful." The judge also held that the minister failed to conscientiously consider key points made when making his decision, such as the relative humaneness of various options for addressing bovine TB, on which our clients made specific submissions. Now this is an absolutely brilliant win for wildlife and especially badgers, especially considering that we know that in England 200,000 badgers have sadly been killed due to this badger cull. And if this issue were to re-emerge in Northern Ireland in the future, then Wild Justice will be right back on it and trying to stop it from happening just as brilliantly as they have done right now. So massive congratulations to everybody involved for such an incredible win. And if you want to keep up to date with the work that Wild Justice do, you can sign up to their free and brilliant newsletter. The link for that is in the chat. How absolutely brilliant to start the show off like this. What do you think, Megan and Christina?
I mean, it is just absolutely fantastic news. And I mean, your enthusiasm is already getting me even more excited, and we were all excited this morning when we got it through. I mean, it's just, you don't feel like you get a lot of good news sometimes in environmental and nature issues. You know, we do really need these good news moments sometimes. We need to celebrate with them when we get them.
Absolutely, and badgers, there's a lot of misinformation going on around badgers. You know, the cull is a dreadful thing based on biased information, and it really has no grounding. So it's a massive win for badgers in Northern Ireland. And I know the Wild Justice team members, Chris included with that, but also the wonderful Ruth Tingay and Mark Avery, won't be patting themselves on the back enough for this. So congratulations to you 3, and of course the lawyers at Lee Day, everyone involved with this. This is massive because thousands of badgers' lives have been saved with this. Let's just hope that we get more information like this coming across the UK when we look deeper and at the truthful facts of what goes on behind the badger cull.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're all delighted, and we've been delighted all day. So you're going to get a very delighted crew working on this show today. So we're going to start off with a very delighted skull of the day. I hope you're ready. So this was our skull that was shared by Chris, so you can hopefully see it here. Now, we had a lot of people asking or suggesting cormorant for this, and I can understand why you might think that. We've got this lovely long bill with that nice curved tip at the end there. So I can see why, you know, maybe a cormorant or a shag might be the first thing that comes to your mind. I'm afraid that was not the answer. We did have a few other people suggesting a gannet. Again, I can see why you get that answer. A gannet's bill is a little bit straighter and quite a bit bigger. I do actually have a gannet skull here to show you, and you can see really quite clearly there, you know, that size difference. You know, gannets are big birds, you know, biggest wingspan that we have in the UK. Anyway, but I can reveal the answer now. So the answer was a goosander for this skull. Look at that, absolutely beautiful bird there. I love a goosander. The male, I mean, with that gleaming green head is just beautiful. And the female's gorgeous as well. The female's gorgeous as well.
A bit of sexual dimorphism, the differences between male and female. Absolutely. Sometimes easy to identify at times.
I know. It does make it a little bit easier. But I can say a huge congratulations to Nick Gass and Kieran Lamond for getting that right, and getting it right very, very quickly, I might add. So massive congratulations to them. Now, we've been loving, as we have every day, we've been loving having in your photos, your footage, all of the stuff that you've been sending in to us. We've been getting so much of it. It really makes our morning to flick through it. And again, we have one that we'd like to highlight right at the beginning. This is coming from Nicola. This is a beautiful bit of footage of bearded tits, which, I mean, I personally, you know, I would quite like them to be called mustachioed tits. You know, I'd quite like that. But, you know, I think bearded tits is also pretty good. So this is a really amazing spectacle. So bearded tits at this time of year are dispersing. They come here to migrate, lots of them come here to breed in the summertime and then disperse again as the end of the summer comes in and autumn starts. So you might see them moving away from those areas where they've bred, so keep your eyes peeled. But they're a really rare bird, only about 630 breeding pairs across the UK, so if you do see them, you're really, really lucky, but do keep your eyes peeled if you live near to some reed beds where there are bearded tits.
I'm quite envious of Nicola. If you're watching, Nicola, I'm very jealous of your footage and your encounter with bearded tits or mustachio tits, which just makes them sound like suave, doesn't it? It makes them sound like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they look very suave. I feel like, you know, we should honour that in their name.
Suavey tits, that's the name I'm going to call them from now on. Now, of course, it wouldn't be 8 out of 10 bats without a word of the day, and we're very lucky that Susie Dent has been coming in to give us a bit of a quiz word riddle or such. What is today's one going to be, Susie?
My wordy question for today is, which tiny animal inspired the word mussel?
Mussel. What do you think?
I mean, my brain just keeps on going to marine. You know, we've had urchin, we've now got mussel. I'm just thinking of the bivalves. I'm just thinking of those lovely blue mussels that we see along the coastline. You know, I'm not too sure about the origins of it. That is
No, that's really hard, isn't it? I think we're thinking too literally.
I know.
I think that's the lesson that we've learned, is that we often think, you know, quite literally about what the animal could be. But it's been harder than that, and I feel like Susie's getting harder and harder. But if you do get the answer, I'm pleased to say that the person who's fastest to get the answer, and we see it first in the chat, is going to be the very proud, very distinguished owner of the 8 out of 10 Bats mug. There are only 8 of these, as we've previously stated. All you have to do if you do win is obviously email your address to us. But wouldn't you be lucky? Wouldn't all your friends be jealous if they all came round for tea and saw you drinking out of this mug? I think they would. And obviously we've got other things as well for you, like our pin badge, which will come in a larger size than we currently have it. But here's a photograph of it so you can get the idea, and you can pre-order that. All of the links are in the chat.
Very
now,
stylish,
we've had a good start to the show, haven't we, Christina?
We have.
It's been pretty good, but it's only going to get better from here, because I'm really pleased to say that Indy is joined live by the CEO of Trees for Life, which is, of course, the host of Dundreggan, where we are.
Thank you very much once again, and I'm here with Steve Micklewood, and you are the CEO of Trees for Life. But it's not just you here, isn't it? You've got your lovely dog. Remind me of your dog's name.
Matteo.
Yeah, Thank you so much for both being here.
No problem,
So tell me a bit about what Trees for Life was like when you first started, and tell me about what Dundreggan was like. 'Cause it was 2008, wasn't it?
Yeah, before we owned Dundreggan, we bought it in 2008. It was a very traditional deer stalking estate. So what you had was lots of bare ground, an awful lot of deer. The guy that owned it became quite old and infirm, so the deer were encouraged down off the hill to the lodge so that he could just shoot them. And so it was very traditional, very, very kind of what you'd expect of the Highlands of Scotland.
Yeah, very interesting. Obviously not what it's like now. So tell me about how Trees for Life transformed the landscape, and do you think this is what we should be seeing across the Highlands? Because it's all about collaboration, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. So what we set about doing was to restore the landscape, rewild it, So what we've done is planted a lot of trees that should be here. We've reduced the deer numbers so the trees can grow themselves, because it's actually really important that trees are able to regenerate on their own. And by doing that, we started to see a massive return of wildlife, of course. So it's been a gradual process, a gentle process of reawakening the landscape, waking it up from years and years and years of being quite barren, quite desolate.
That's amazing. And which species have you seen benefit the most from the work you guys have been
Well,
doing here?
if you look around Dundreggan, about 4,000 different species have been found here, but the highlights for me are the black grouse, which are declining in
Nice.
Scotland, been increasing. Golden eagles bred here recently for the first time since the 1980s, so they're making a comeback. But it's also about a kind of bioabundance. We're seeing more nature, more wildlife, and we're seeing crested tits. Red squirrels are coming through, but it's not quite ready for them yet. We're hoping the habitat will improve for them over the years and that they'll actually be all around the Rewilding Centre one day.
Oh, could you imagine? That'd be amazing. Well, we'll have to come back and check out if the red squirrels are returned. And I guess my next question is, what are your hopes for the future? But I guess it's seeing those kind of species returning, isn't it?
Yeah, it's seeing more wildlife coming back. And what my dream, of course, is about blue throats, actually, which are lovely birds that you get in Norway. And if we restore the top of the mountains with little tiny trees, little wee trees, the blue throats that visit from Norway will start to breed here. And that would be amazing, because they come here and visit and they go, it's not quite right for us. Let's get the mountains good for them, and then we'll really see the benefit of that.
Could you imagine blue throats here? Oh, flipping heck, that would be amazing to see. Now, something I really want to know, are lynx on the cards for Dundreggan in the future, do you think?
Well, we know Scotland could support about 400 lynx, and the Highlands would be a very good stronghold for them. And all the biology, all the ecology, all the animal welfare is fairly straightforward in terms of bringing back lynx, because they should be here because they're a native species that we've lost. And it's the sociology, the social situation that makes it hard. So there are people who feel they might lose out if lynx come back, particularly sheep farmers. And lynx are a Labrador-sized predator, about the size of Mateo, so they can take sheep. Not that often generally, but that's a concern for sheep farmers. So in order to get to the point where we could see a reintroduction, we have to overcome those concerns and find a way to kind of mitigate for them. So if people do lose sheep, they don't lose their livelihoods, because sheep farming is a hard graft in Scotland. So we have to try and make it work for sheep farmers in particular.
Absolutely, like you say, just got to make it work for everybody, and hopefully one day we'll see them back in this amazing landscape. Thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time to talk to us, and keep it up, and hopefully we'll see lynx and blue throats here next time.
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That'd be amazing. So now we've got a brilliant film by Xander, otherwise known as Ant Boy, and he's taking a walk around the Cairngorms Connect area with Stuart Taylor as they share perspectives on their futures of the natural world.
This whole mini world is really what I've based my passion off from, because all the plants and the insects that work together have got this whole harmonised world that we don't really think about, and we'll go about our day without taking a second look at it. But they all work together really hard to create an ecosystem that is just as good, if not better, than anything else. People on social media know me as Ant Boy, because it's where it all started for me. When I was really young and just moved up to Aviemore, I started doing surveys with specifically ants, and that's where my passion of nature came from. I've lived near Abernethy Forest for 8 years of my life, and it's where I've spent a lot of my time growing up. It's home to a natural nature reserve that's loved by so many, and for good reason. It's remnants of the iconic ancient Caledonian pine forests, a once huge ecosystem that 4,000 years ago spanned over 1.5 million hectares, but now is only in small remnants found across Scotland. One of the best things about exploring these woods is that you never know what you'll see, or who you'll meet. On my many adventures here, I've gotten to know Stuart Taylor, who loves this forest just as much as me.
A lot has changed in the years since I came, because when I arrived here was from the Isle of Rum in 1976. I think everybody thinks I'm an expert of something, but I'm just a dabbler. But at this time of year, which is really August through till about the end of October, it's something called tooth fungi that we get involved with. We now realise that out of 18 or 19 species in the UK, we have 14 species just on this reserve. And you may have seen this one. Have you ever seen it coming out of a pine cone?
Certainly not.
And this is the ear pick. You've got a job to find it in some way, so it's just showing you, trying to get you some idea that we've got all these trees, all this habitat, and some fungi will have a link to the mossy bits, the bases of trees. You know, so we've actually got this variety of habitats in here.
I definitely think it's amazing living in an area like this with so many rare species, because it's just completely different to every other part of the world. And it really puts it on us, because we've got to give our part back to the environment and go looking for it, and that's what I really enjoy about it. You spend your career looking after this forest and a lot of hard work and hours. When you see reports like the State of Nature saying that 1 in 6 species in the UK are endangered, how does that make you feel?
Well, it's a very worrying picture. Top of that list, believe it or not, is birds, with things like invertebrates and fungi quite high up that list. So it's trying to get this bigger picture in people's mind. Do we need more trees on the ground? Perhaps less intensive farming? You know, I mean, today I've not seen rain like this ever, really. So is this global warming? It's the warmest year we've ever had. Yes, as you're starting to grow now, 70-year-old, and life is catching up, how do you feel for nature into the future? Do you think we're onto a positive route or not?
I think there's a lot more awareness of it now than there was even a couple of years ago, but there's still a lot of work to be done as well. So I'm optimistic for the future and hoping that things will change, but not complacent, because I do know that we need to still play our parts, and there's still people who aren't playing their parts. And I really hope that the people like myself and others around me of my generation that are really passionate about nature can convince those others to try and make a difference.
Oh, that was just lovely, wasn't it? I mean, it's so nice to see their relationship, you know, and that kind of cross-generational learning. You know, I love that, each kind of younger generation taking from the older and giving back in return, you know.
I know. When I was a kid, my mum used to try and get me to mix with people my own age, but they didn't know enough. So when I used to get put together with an older naturalist, my school teacher, John Buckley, was the first one. You know, I mean, he just had so much knowledge. I still love spending time with them, just soaking all up that stuff, you know, and particularly when it's got personal history like that. So good.
Yeah, these people are so important. I have a really interesting fact, actually, that I learned today. So there are around 4,000 species in Abernethy Forest alone. I mean, that in itself is an incredible fact. But Stuart has actually recorded 1,000 of those, a quarter of all those species. And that's all been down to him.
I know,
How
what
amazing.
a bloke, what a bloke. A brilliant naturalist. Good to see him passing on his skills. And also, of course, 4,000 species in that forest. That's what it's all about here at Dundreggan, as you've just heard from Steve. It's about rebuilding that Caledonian forest. Can't be done overnight, but the dividends will be paid at some point when we get those 4,000 species back in environments all over Scotland. Top work.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that. I have a quick quiz for you, Chris.
Yeah,
How
go
you
on.
feeling?
I like a quiz.
So, what is the largest organism on the planet?
Well, people are often drawn to dinosaurs, but the largest organism on the planet is a contemporary animal. It's extant now. It's the blue whale, 30 metres.
Do you know, I would say the same. I would, but it's not right. It is the largest animal, but it's not the largest organism. So if we take a look at our blue whale here, about 33 metres in length. And you are right, as I said, the largest animal on the planet today. Now, if we look kind of, you know, a little bit more up the scale, we have the coast redwood. Now, that's 115 metres long, so that's, you know, also pretty chunky, let's be honest. But again, still not the largest organism. The largest organism is, in fact, a species of honey fungus, and it is 9 kilometres squared.
Right.
9 kilometres squared in area, and that includes not just the fruiting bodies that we can see on the top there, it also includes that mycelium, that huge network that exists beneath the soil.
It's an organism that carries, you know, over a very large area. It's spread out, but those mycelium, I mean, they're like hair-like little roots.
I know, but it's...
So the mass of it is not going to be as big, is it?
No, this is the point, though. It is. So, essentially, they had a kind of mass die-off in the 80s in a forest in Oregon. They couldn't work out what the problem was. They did a load of research and a load of tests, and they realised it was this honey fungus. So it's parasitic. It had gotten into those trees and it had caused this huge die-off. But there was so much of it. It was one organism, so much of it. 7,500 tonnes in mass.
7,500 tonnes
Yeah.
of fungal mycelium in one mass.
It's incredible, and it spread over that whole area. So that whole area, that 9.5 kilometres squared, 3 times the size of London. absolutely bonkers. One single organism spread over that huge area, you know, and parasitizing all these trees. So what it does is it gets into the roots and then underneath the bark, and it extracts the nutrients from the tree and just slowly kills them off. It's unbelievable.
What an extraordinary thing that is, honestly. And again, it says so much about our forest ecosystem. Sometimes when we look at forests, we just think of trees or the understory and the shrubs and plants that are going there, and of course the animals in amongst it, but it's more than that. That forest is supported by all of that soil, all of that fungal hyphae. You cut the trees down, you completely destroy that ecosystem, and that's why rewilding is not going to be done overnight. To rebuild those ecosystems and give them that sort of resilience is going to take a long time, and some of those fungi are really long-lived as well. They live for thousands of years, don't they?
Do you know, I have a fact about that? 2,000 to 8,000 years old this one was estimated at.
8,000 years old.
Unbelievable.
Fantastic. Good time of year for fungi, though. Lots of people have been out and about taking photographs of the fruiting bodies that they see. Look at this extraordinary blue cobalt fungus. Amazing.
Oh, wow.
Well, many of them don't have, you know, English names. If I was going to give this one an English name, I'd call it red caviar fungus, but it may not have one, to be honest with you. And this is extraordinary, yeah. So these are drips that are running down. They don't have gills, this type of fungus, and they drip off with the spores in them. And this is one that I see in the New Forest.
Stalactites.
Yeah.
That one's a slightly less.
Well, that looks like a pile of bird poo on a branch, doesn't it, really? But I mean, of course, it's doing its stuff.
Yeah,
Fantastic. So if you get any more photos, do send them in. They are extremely diverse in their form. Do leave them there. Remember, these are essentially the flowers of the fungus. If you harm them, then those spores won't be there and they won't germinate, and then at some point, 8,000 years from now, there won't be fungi supporting a whole ecosystem. Fantastic stuff. But from one parasite to another, which will quite literally blow your mind. This is possibly the parasite of all parasites.
My favourite.
And to demonstrate its extraordinary life cycle, we've got the one and only Lucy Lapwing and one of her props.
Thanks, Chris. I hope you're not calling me the parasite. Right, today I'm going to bring you, wait for it, a mind-controlling barnacle. And I even have one ready for you on a little stick. Now, I know what you're thinking. This doesn't look like a barnacle. We normally think of barnacles as those things plastered all over rocks at the seaside. But this is definitely a barnacle. Not only that, it's also a crustacean, like crabs. This particular species is Saccagina carsini. I hope I've said that right. It's one of over 200 of this type of barnacle in the world, but a more common name for it is the crab hacker. So this is a barnacle that hacks crabs. How on earth does that work? Well, we've got to join Saccagina carsini earlier on in its life cycle. Once this hatches from an egg in the open ocean, if it's a female, she'll swim about freely through the water, through the currents, until she encounters a crab. At this point, she'll latch onto the crab, somewhere often by the gills, but it can be anywhere. She'll drill through that tough exoskeleton and then she's in. So this is the underside of a crab. We're going to peel away the underside of this crab and reveal the inside, some nice pink fleshy bits. Now, once she's in, that's when she starts to take over. She starts spreading with these filaments into every single area of the crab, all the way through, this way and that way, until she's taken up pretty much all the space except for two really important elements, and that is the gills and the heart of the crab. So she's basically installed herself in the driving seat of the crab, but she's still got the powerhouse. She can still get energy. She can still power herself about. Once she's in there, she can start extracting nutrients. So she's controlling that crab's eating away as normal, she's gaining all of those nutrients. So she exists internally, but she also exists externally. So I'm just going to pop this off and you'll see there's this spongy little growth here. Now, this is the underside of the crab. The barnacle will emerge as this kind of spongy, grotesque looking mass. It sticks out like this. And this, as I said, is of a female crab. Now, we have an amazing photo of this. This was sent in by Max Willem, and she's a self-pronounced crab nerd. She absolutely loves them, and she specifically studies these crabs that have been hacked by barnacles. You can see that spongy mass there on the underside. Isn't that fascinating? Really quite gross and sticking out. Really cool to see. So that barnacle now is hanging out in the ocean. What's it doing? It's getting all the food it needs. How is it now going to move on? How is it going to reproduce? Well, as well as this morphological change in the sac, this is a female crab. She's changing the behaviour. If it's a female crab, she's still going to carry on tending to that barnacle as though it's her egg sac, her babies. But what about when the barnacle meets a male crab? She'll still hack it, but she needs to change it a little bit more because that male crab is not used to tending this little mass on the outside. Now I've got a treat for you here. There's some crab gonads. Don't ever say that you're not impressed by this. Here we have what a male and female's abdomen look like on the underside of a crab. So the males you can see is quite slim and pointed. The female's is round and a little bit juicier. When the male crab is hacked by a barnacle, he undergoes a change and his genitals will start to look a little bit more like a female. So you can see here, this is an uninfected male, this is an infected male, this is an uninfected female. You can see it swells and it gets a little bit more like a female's. So it's changing him morphologically. This is morphological feminization. This is nature being queer in action, showing that it just doesn't fit with the binaries that we try to apply to sex. All of this is happening. So part of this is changing his behaviour. We've got some amazing footage here from Steve Truella, and this is to show that dangling barnacle there. You can see it. Oh my God, it's gloopy. It's pulsating. It's really quite freaky and weird. You can see it moving there and twitching. She's hanging out there now underneath the crab, and that's going to be helping her reproduce very soon. I think we can see some behaviour here of the crab tending to that barnacle. You can see it's starting to look after it as though it's that egg mass on the underside, ready to reproduce. So, next little bit, completing the life cycle, here comes the male barnacle. He's swimming about in the ocean. He finds this dangling female gonad of the barnacle on an infected crab. He then becomes a parasite of her, injects her with sperm. She then becomes pregnant and she will mind control that crab. She's wearing that crab as a robot suit. She'll climb herself up to a high up rock and then she'll stand there and shake her belly and shake all of those eggs of the barnacle into the current to be carried away to infect another crab. How mad is that? When I learnt that, it just absolutely blew my mind. It's complicated and amazing, and that's just one of my favourite things about nature. So yeah, hopefully again, if you're eating your tea, that's not put you off some crab gonads. We're going to go to a film now with a little bit of a tangent. This is coming from Cairngorms Connect, and Jack Ward is a deer stalker there. Now this is a really important message about a conservation issue. It doesn't contain any gore, but it is quite sensitive. It's really, really important that we talk about it. Over to Jack.
I've got a deer down in this tree line. I think it's hard to pick a time when I wasn't into wildlife. Oh, crested tit. That's great to see. Going out with my dad because he was really into birds, so we'd go out looking at birds' nests and watching them nesting and stuff like that. I was just normal. I've worked for field centres as guides, wildlife guiding, and I've worked as an ecologist freelance, and then my first kind of major job in deer management was for Nature Scott, and then 2019 I joined Cairngorms Connect as the deer stalker. Cairngorms Connect project has a really long-term aim of 200 years for nature restoration. Our biodiversity is in massive decline and something needs to be done at scale, and that's exactly what Cairngorms Connect can do. We can restore ecosystems, we can restore biodiversity at a landscape scale. But it's also great for the people that live here as well, and actually Cairngorms Connect is as much about including people as it is wildlife. So at the moment what we see widely in Scotland is deer numbers are far too high and have been for a long, long time. There's now concerted efforts to bring those deer numbers down, and when we do that, we see habitats regenerate. So when there's too many deer, everything will get eaten or trampled. When the deer numbers come down and the pressures come down, the habitat responds and recovers. I haven't come from a shooting background, and I really love seeing the deer, and actually I would rather not have to shoot the deer. But I would rather take that responsibility for myself because I do care about them and I know it's being done right, and hopefully I'm coming at it from a compassionate background, because I can see that when we manage the deer, the welfare of the remaining deer and the health of the remaining deer is so much better than if we didn't do it. And if we don't manage the deer, we don't only see suffering in those deer, we see suffering in the whole landscape and the biodiversity as a whole. I really enjoy working every day with my best friend. It sounds quite cheesy,
but actually just hanging out all day with Rua and working quite closely together. So it's not just being friends, we're actually colleagues and really important colleagues.
The good markers, really, because that's not that far away.
Just get left for this next 5 yards. When we're approaching the deer, we have to make sure we have a safe shooting angle. It sounds a bit counterintuitive to say it's safe for the deer because we're aiming to shoot it, but what I mean by that is that it's as humane as possible. So it's a safe shot, and actually the shot that's going to be delivered will be quick, it'll be humane, and there's no chance of injury. It's really important that we make use of that deer, and then it'll either get taken away by a game dealer, or we're doing more private sales much more close to home. So we want to try and reduce our carbon footprint, reduce those food miles. A big part of Cairn Clubs Connect is trying to get people involved. As well as direct employment, it's also about trying to get money to circulate in the communities, but also socially as well. So we work with school groups, we work with university groups, where young people can come and see all aspects of the Cairn Clubs Connect work. They can go out with the ecologists and learn about river restoration. They can come to the larder and they can see firsthand what we do in a deer larder. They can learn about deer management and the importance of it firsthand, which is great for them. So obviously it's a really long-term project, and quite often it's a thing of, oh, it's a shame you won't be able to get to see it to come to fruition. But actually for me, this is the exciting time. We're right at the forefront, we're right at that cutting edge now, and it's really exciting to be part of that first team. Cairn Clubs Connect is a brand new project, it's a flagship project, and in years to come, when the list of names is involved of who was there at the start, we can say we were, and that's a really exciting prospect.
I know that this is controversial because for many people, killing for conservation is essentially an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. But here we've got to think of the bigger picture. I know it may look like a wilderness, but this is a manscape. Every square metre of this environment has been impacted by us. And one of the things that we did here a long time ago was to get rid of all the big predators, the things that would otherwise be eating those deer. I'm talking about wolves. Now, the last wolf disappeared in Scotland in the 1700s. We've been living without them for a long time. The deer population has grown enormously, and it's severely impacted on these forests. They're not regenerating. If we want a broad mosaic, a richness of life, then we need those large predators back, or we have to take matters into our own hands like Jack does. Now, wolves is a long shot when it comes to reintroductions, but one thing that we are interested in and perhaps closer to is reintroducing northern lynx. And this has been done all over Europe. It's been done in Slovenia, Switzerland, Germany. They've now even moved into the Netherlands, a country which is as highly populated as ours as well. So that is a feasible reality, but it's not happening yet. And if we want these trees to grow, if we want these forests to recover, then we will have to continue to cull those deer. But then it's got to work for the community. And that's why I'm going to tell you that on Saturday, the 28th, you can pop into Nethy Bridge, where the playing fields are, and there is from hill to grill there. You can meet Jack and talk about his work. There are cookery demonstrations. You can go foraging. You can go on some walks, even some local music. It's about putting back into those communities that are living and working and needing to survive in these areas which are going to be rewilded, because we're not going to get those predators back straight away. And even if we did get them back, it's not just about them killing things. It's about what we call an ecology of fear. They change the behaviour of their prey. And in the case of deer, it means that they don't graze or browse in one place for too long and do too much damage. They keep them moving on. So I know it's controversial. Please think about it deeply. We all love life. We all love deer. But we've messed up the world and we've got to fix it. And unfortunately, at the moment, that's part of the game. Okay, another thing that's messing up the world in a big way, the bird world, is bird flu. And that has got Megs onto her soapbox.
It's quite a big soapbox for me. It's one that's close to my heart. It's close to all of our hearts because I'm sure walking along the coastlines, we've all seen birds that are suffering from this very tragic, highly contagious virus that impacts the respiration, the digestion and the nervous centre of these birds. It's a really desperate situation. It's one that we're all aware of. None more so perhaps location-wise than Bass Rock. Bass Rock is one of my favourite places in the UK. It's the largest northern gannet colony anywhere in the world. And I've said it time and time again that stepping onto Bass Rock, I've had the pleasure of doing so a few times, is like stepping into a scene from Jurassic Park. You've got all these like pterodactyl-like birds flying above your head, and it is magnificent. I went when I was young, about 9 or 10 years old. I went again in 2021. Chris and I both went to do some filming, and there were so many birds that they nests spilled over onto the paths, and you kind of had to leap between them, trying not to disturb them too much. But that was just how many birds there are, 150,000 at that point. Skip forward to 2022. Well, the situation was a little bit different because bird flu hit, and it hit hard. And I chatted to Maggie from the Scottish Seabird Centre. She looks after Bass Rock, and it was devastating to hear what it was like when she had to go and visit that rock and see exactly the devastation that the gannets had due to bird flu. Now, there wasn't an official consensus, a counting done since 2014, but I have the exclusive news to share with you now that there has been a count done. This is in collaboration with the Scottish Seabird Centre, the University of Edinburgh, and the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. Now, when you're thinking of the statistics about how bad the gannets had it, I thought it was going to be really drastic, and it is. But actually what's happened is that the gannet numbers have reduced somewhere between 25 to 30%. Perhaps not as high as you might be expecting, but when you put it into the perspective that that's over 20,000 birds lost from Bass Rock, that is huge. Whether it's still the largest northern gannet colony in the world, I don't know. I don't know whether other counts have been done after the impact of bird flu. They use specific drone technology to figure that out, some of the first of its kind, I believe. So it's a really important study to understand how bird flu is impacting these kinds of animals. But it's not just Scotland and the UK that have experienced bird flu, it is all around the world. America, Asia, you name it, it's been there. And as of Monday, the first report of bird flu came all the way from Antarctica. There's been no strain of bird flu there before, so these birds are incredibly vulnerable. Things like endangered albatross, things like penguins, even the seals, because we know, of course, bird flu gets into mammals as well. So it's really troubling that there could be devastating impacts all the way on that frozen continent. So what can we do about it? Well, obviously we can go around looking for, well, if we see a dead bird, we can report it to the authorities. But the other thing we've got to think about is how bird flu originated. It came from intensive farming chickens and poultry spread around the world, and that's how it started. So we've got to think about bird-to-bird contact, which brings me on to another point. Now, every year, 60 million game birds are released into the UK countryside without much thought about the damage that they could do ecologically to our native species. And just recently in mid-Wales, 1.7 million pheasants were found to tested positive for bird flu. Now, these weren't released into the environment, I have to say. And if there is a game farming rearing area that is within, about 50 metres of a special protected area, they have to apply for a licence from Natural England and DEFRA. However, we have reason to suspect that not all is as it seems, and the process isn't as transparent as we'd like it to be. So we really need to think about, is it the time to be releasing game birds? First of all, is that ethical within itself to be shooting these game birds, putting non-natives into our environment? Second of all, with bird flu around, putting 60 million game birds around, that could spread bird flu to our really vulnerable wild populations is, of course, going to be questionable. So be vigilant when you're out and about, take notice of what's around you with the birds, and of course, don't touch if you can, just report it to the relevant bodies. Now, I've given you a lot of information there. Of course, that's quite a sad story, although good news from Bass Rock is that numbers this year seem to be recovering. Chicks have hatched. I've been there recently myself, and it was much louder, noisier, busier than I expected. So hopefully it's good news for Bass Rock. Not out of the woods yet. Of course, bird flu is still around. Now, whilst we soak all of that in, let's take a bit of a breather. Sometimes it's nice to wander around the woods because it has a really calming impact for both our physical and mental health. And that's exactly what Kath Wright goes and does.
It grounds you, it really does make you relax. I suffer from a racing head most of the time, so it's good for to slow down.
It's almost like the trees were my guide to relaxing. It was just a really nice way of being able to just focus myself and kind of forgetting about the few stresses that I've got going on.
It was just really good to, like, I don't know, just like slow everything down and like get a bit more zen. It made me feel like a bit more settled about what I was thinking about, and that was, yeah, just really peaceful.
I felt more sort of invigorated, I think, really. I will be more aware when I am in like open spaces and more natural spaces to actually slow down a bit and, yeah, look a bit more and feel a bit more.
Forest bathing stems from a Japanese practice called Shinrin-yoku, which came about in the 80s, and Shinrin-yoku loosely translates to taking the atmosphere of the forest. So that's why we're bathing in the atmosphere and the goodness that the forest gives out during a session. There's huge amounts of benefits just being in nature on our mental health. So even just 10 minutes once a week in nature, we can really boost our immune system, we can boost our mental health, and just find that escapism in our heads to try and detract from the things that we're worrying about and the things that are concerning us. A lot of the work that I do is with community groups and green health prescriptions, that kind of work, which is why I wanted to do it in the first place, and it's what I really enjoy. It's people that really need it and can benefit. And so people will come with a level of anxiety, but it's beautiful to watch people and see during a session as they start to settle in and start to focus, and that beauty of giving people that one thing to focus on, whether it's the textures or the small things or things that are moving, but if they focus on that one thing, they start to forget everything else that they're focused on and they're worrying about. And you can see at the end of the session, shoulders have come down and people look relaxed and they're happy, and yeah, it's lovely.
Oh, that was lovely.
Wasn't that so good? I love a bit of forest bathing. And speaking of which, I think these guys are doing a bit at the moment. Guys, we've got a show to make.
What?
No? Anyone?
Lazy.
Okay.
I mean, I guess
never mind.
We can just leave them to it, I suppose.
Yeah.
We could probably do it.
Good shout. Okay, should we head over to the cache and leave them to it?
Yeah, let's go have a
We'll
look.
have to do that then. Sorry, guys.
I haven't been over to the cache yet. I'm quite excited.
Have you not? Well, what have you got for us?
Well, I thought we would focus on some of the most colourful things that we've got in our cache. And if you don't mind, I'd like to kick off. Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay. So here I present to you what looks to be just a humble stick, but look more closely at it. Look at the colour of it. How many sticks have you seen this colour? This is, it's beautiful. Yeah, just the one. It's beautiful, isn't it? So this is actually caused by a fungus, the green elf cup. Now there's not many fungus that are green in colour, so it's very special to see this one, all right? Now this one, we don't have any fruiting bodies on it at the moment. It's just the kind of colour of the green. But if you look, you'll be able to see, we've got some photos here from Lucy Lapwing that show how it gets the cup name. So the fruiting bodies look like these little green cups that emerge from the wood. And you can see they're kind of that cup shape, and normally they tend to go a little bit flatter as time goes on. There we are. So you can see there, that's it. They're really quite tiny, really quite small, but that's what the cups themselves look like. But the cups don't cause the green colour on the wood. That's the mycelium. So the mycelium is that, obviously, that network of fungi. It gets into the stick, and it has a pigment in it. I need to double check the name of this. It is xylinden. Xylinden. I don't know.
Rather you than me.
I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. But that causes that green colour. And of course, we think it's beautiful, but it's not just us. Artists for years and years have also thought that this colour was absolutely stunning, and have used it in their artistry pieces. So there's actually been traces of this fungi found in Italian Renaissance artwork, dating all the way back to the 1500s.
That's
1500s.
so cool.
That's how, and it might have been being used even longer than that. So there we go.
That's
That's
so
my
cool.
offering.
What a stick! Right, you ready for some more colourful stuff?
Yeah, show me.
Okay. You ready?
Oh, I know what that is. I know what that is.
Look at that. So here we have a beautiful, an absolutely beautiful jay feather, and you can see the gorgeous, so many different shades of blue there. But now, although it's very stunning, these colours are actually not what they seem. So these colours are made up of microscopic structures, including proteins and various molecules. Now, this structure can absorb or reflect light through various wavelengths, and it's the wavelengths which are reflected off the feathers back into our eyes, which gives us the illusion of colour. Now, this is often seen with colours like blues and purples and particularly green, because they have short colour light lengths. Now, this means that colours aren't always as they appear. And of course, you know, if you're trying to create a blue colour, imagine trying to grow blue. So pigment is a very, very
I can't do it.
I can't do it. Well, after maybe very cold, my fingers might go a bit blue.
That's amazing.
But
so actually, all these birds that we admire for being blue, the blue tits, the jays, the kingfishers, they're lying
to us. Exactly.
What's
so
that all about?
exactly, because obviously pigment is such an expensive thing to create yourself. But there is actually one bird called the turicomb that has a pure green plumage that does not use any light trickery, and purely has the pigment within its own feathers. So absolutely superb stuff there. Look at the colours there.
Amazing. What a good find. What a good find.
Isn't it gorgeous? That's going right back in my pocket.
Look after that.
Absolutely. Super good stuff. And now we're going to head over to Chris for our book of the day.
Books of the day today, and I'm going to introduce this one. This is Reflections, What Wildlife Needs and How to Provide It, by my colleague at Wild Justice, Mark Avery. Now, this isn't a guide to what wildlife needs in your garden. It's about what wildlife needs in the UK. We were speaking earlier about the State of Nature report, and it's telling us that most of our principal habitats are in decline and 16% of the UK species are in danger of extinction. Something's got to happen. You could make a good argument that conservation is not working. Now, Mark worked in conservation at the highest level for a long time. He's now written this book. This book, I would say, is important. It outlines some of the flaws, the things that we're doing wrong. It offers suggestions as to how we should put those right. And it also celebrates the successes of those things that we have got right, but we're not implementing them broadly enough and rapidly enough. I would suggest you read this book. It's really important. It deals with some big issues like reforming national parks, changing the way that we shape conservation in the UK, changing the ways that our NGOs work. Big thoughts in this one, but I've got to draw your attention to this one as well, possibly the most beautiful book of the year. The Squirrel and the Lost Treasure by Coralie Bickford-Smith. Now, I'm just going to show you a few of the illustrations in here. It's like a poem. It's beautifully illustrated. The paper is gorgeous. I can tell you, it smells fantastic as well. Look at that. It is absolutely wonderful. It's a work of art as well as a book. And I can tell you that it's good for kids. Definitely reading that as a child would be a great thing to do. But as an adult, it's just a pleasure to pick it up and look through these pages. Look at that. One more at the end. I've got to show you the one at the end of the acorn. Oh, where's the acorn? Look at these beautiful drawings of an acorn there that transforms into a tree. Superb. The Squirrel and the Lost Treasure by Coralie Bickford-Smith. What a book.
I like that.
So good.
It's
Beautiful.
so good.
Beautiful.
Yeah, really gorgeous.
Okay, coming to the end then.
We are coming to the end. I know, it's gone really quick tonight, but we should, of course, start off, or I say finish off, Susie Dent's word of the day. You might remember before she teased us with mussel, but what was the answer?
So today's question was, which tiny animal inspired the word mussel? Bear with me on this, because it's actually the mouse. The mouse lies behind the muscles of our body because the ancient Romans looked at their athletes who often trained naked, saw them flexing their biceps and thought, that looks like a tiny mouse scuttling under the skin. So the word muscle, M-U-S-C-L-E, comes from the Latin musculus, meaning little mouse.
Mouse. Mouse. Did you get that?
I didn't actually.
Ah.
No, there we are. But who gets the mug?
Well, that is a very good question because, of course, the first person that we saw to answer that one correctly, and it was a hard one, Chris didn't even get it right. So, Deb Small, this is on its way to you. Well done, yes.
Rarer than a Ming vase. Only 8 of these in the world, precious objects. At some stage they'll be in museums or on the Antiques Roadshow, as I suggested.
We do think a lot of ourselves here on 8 out of 10 bats. But yes, please do let us know where you live. So email us in at 8outof10bats@chrispackham.co.uk.
And we'll post it off in March. Now, look, the other thing that we've got is, I was joking about that. The pin badges, the micro pin badges used yesterday by Megan as an earring, they will be larger. If you'd like to get your hands on one of these, the details are now being pinned in the chat. So you can pre-order one of those and we'll post those out in September.
No,
I'm joking.
No,
at the end of the series,
Absolutely. Now, you've still been sending us your superb pictures and clips. Now, this one here was sent to us by Ewan Miles from the Isle of Mull. Now, take a look at this. This is some superb kleptoparasitism, which you can see the otter. There's an otter. This is filmed in the Isle of Mull, just skulking between 4 juvenile white-hood eagles there. Now, keep an eye on the otter lit up there. And you see the eagles just keeping an eye on it. You can see the eagles are coming in and trying to take the otter's prey. Now keep an eye now. Look at that. Look at this. Whoa!
Oh, wow.
The otter is narrowly missed as the eagle just grabs some seaweed there as it dives underwater. Look how close that was.
That's a miss and a half, isn't it? That otter's like gone back to its hole and thought, whew, I had a close shave.
You know, there's those kids, and they always watch those things on YouTube about, you know, like tyrannosaur versus bear and all those sorts of things. Go on then. Otter versus eagle. That's a tough call.
Mega shark versus
It's good. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I wouldn't want to be either in that situation.
No,
really.
the talon of the white-tailed eagle, but the bite force of an otter.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a tricky one.
Fight not worth picking by either of them, I would say. What else we got?
Well, I've got an amazing one to bring forth. This is a basking shark. A basking shark leaping clean out of the water from Jeff Dossett. I mean, basking sharks are our second biggest fish in the sea. They can be up to 12 metres in length. They are humongous. I've had the pleasure of snorkeling with them and they really are massive when you get up close to them. Now, you know, we don't really understand quite why they do this behaviour. You know, it might be to help dislodge parasites, but really it's a really energetically expensive thing for a basking shark to fling itself out of the water.
Display? Could it be displaying?
Well, exactly, yeah. So it might be a courtship display. They are seen doing it during the summertime, you know, when they might be looking for some ladies.
Ooh la la.
And you know, maybe, you know, if they're able to fling themselves up into the air, you know, that shows that they are, you know, going to be the fittest specimens.
And I know that was photographed on a Hebridean Adventures tour, and we're going out with Hebridean Adventures, aren't we, next week? Is it next week we're doing that?
Next week we are. We have a film coming to you, which is in collaboration with Hebridean Adventures. It's a fantastic organisation trip where you can go out on boats, you can see all these different kinds of cetaceans. It's really brilliant, and I'm excited even to be pairing up with them potentially next year myself.
Oh, are you?
I might be. I might be going to see myself a breaching basking shark.
Oh, really?
Maybe.
Oh, lovely. Okay, we've also had this sent in from Ed Druitt. Last night we were talking about pooing slugs, and I was talking about the fact that they poo from an opening very close to their head, and they've evolved that because when they're a snail, they don't want to poo into their shell. But here is a garden snail without a shell.
Bizarre.
Why is the big question. What happened to the shell? I mean, surely it couldn't have hatched from its egg and then grown to that size without a shell.
No, couldn't have.
Would have dehydrated, it would have been predated.
Yeah.
So somehow that shell has disappeared or been removed, and yet the animal is, at that point at least, still alive. If you think you've got any ideas as to what happened to that poor garden snail, then please do let us know.
Yeah, it's almost like a hermit crab. They're very different. Obviously, they keep their shells all throughout their life, snails. They add to them, actually, as they go on year to year. Sometimes you can age a snail by the number of rings around its
Well, you
shell.
can't age that one.
Well, you can't age that one. That's going to be really hard to age.
I can age it and it won't be there tomorrow, probably. Anyway, go on, what have you got anything else?
Oh, I did. Well, I saw this clip that was sent to us online. Now, of course, we talk about hedgehog highways, but look, it's a fox using it.
Oh my
Let's see if we can have a look at that again, because, I mean, it's just adorable. I love how the ears just ping on up.
How does it get through that gap?
That's
Flexible
amazing.
skeleton. Now, hedgehog highways are, of course, really important because our gardens are quite fragmented. Gardens can be a really important resource for all kinds of wildlife. By having fences, we're actually limiting the ability for animals to reach each other, to find mates, to find resources, food and water, and so on. So by having a little hole, just something, I mean, everyone says the size of a CD case, but I don't know even who has CDs anymore. You know, about 16
Well, I've got quite an
centimetres.
extensive collection, actually.
All right, well, moving on.
Slightly smaller than my 7-inch vinyls.
Oh no, well, so about 16 centimetres by 16 centimetres, a hole in the fence. It's good for hedgehogs, it's good, amphibians use it, frogs and toads, all kinds of wildlife will use it. It means they can get from place to place. So go knock on your next door neighbour's door and say, hey, do you mind if I put a little tiny hole in the fence so that animals can find their way through?
But don't make that hole using my limited edition Jesus and Mary Chain CD, which is actually quite precious to me. And that brings us to the end, except that we're going to finish, as we are making a habit of doing, with a joke. And tonight, it's Indy's turn to be king of comedy.
Thank you very much. And that's the title. Hopefully I'll be keeping by the end of this joke. And I have to thank my old lecturer for this joke. I can't take credit. You ready?
And we're
as ready as
poised.
we're gonna be.
We're all
So ready.
poised, yeah.
Two bats sat in a tree. One flies off. 5 minutes later, comes back covered in blood. The other bat says, "Flippin' heck, mate, what happened to you?" And the bat says, "Well, you see that tree over there?" "Yeah." "Well, I bloody didn't."